If you want something spontaneous, it's always best to plan for it.
Welcome to the Create and Invent podcast. We're recording on August 4th, 2023, for once I remember to say that. Today we've got somebody really special. His name is Brian Greiner. He's a retired engineer, and he basically made the transition into being a self-published writer. I've read one of his books and part of another one, and it's being an author of a shorter articles myself, I find it very interesting what he's been able to do. So Brian, how are you? How are you today?
I'm fine, thank you.
Good.
I hope you and Pat are well.
Yeah, we're
I hope
good.
so too.
Now you're in Canada, right? Where do you live exactly?
I
mean, not exactly. We don't need your address, but
yeah. I live in a small town north of Toronto. It's considered within the GTA, the Greater Toronto Area.
Are you a Blue Jays fan?
No.
No, okay. Well, I asked that just whatever, but they actually have their, I think they do their spring training down where I am in Dunedin, Florida.
Yeah.
And so there's a lot of, probably a disproportionate number of fans here. So.
Yes. I'm not really a big sports person.
I like sports okay. I'm about average, I guess, for an American. maybe a little less than average. You're an engineer. That's your training, correct?
I'm actually a diploma in physics engineering, so more emphasis on physics. And it was a practical form of engineering physics with more emphasis on hands-on playing with the stuff rather than getting into the math.
Given the title of the degree, I would have thought it was actually opposite of that. That's interesting.
Yeah, it was a strange course. It only lasted for a few years. Because, university politics.
Sure.
It was, it was a small group. It made sense at the time. Other departments decided they wanted all the space and funding and toys that group had gotten, so they lost. But it was a fascinating course. We got to play with vacuum systems, like some top-notch vacuum systems, RF systems, helium neon lasers. Now this is back in the early 70s, so these things were kind of new then. So the emphasis was on using things.
That's very neat. And this is the university you went to. Was it in Canada as well? Or are you a?
Oh yeah, it was. At the time, it was Ryerson Polytechnical. Now it's Ryerson University, and they've changed their name to Toronto Metro University or some such nonsense. I stopped caring years ago.
You don't need to keep track anymore.
Sure.
You graduated.
Sure. No, I could have been grandfathered into getting a full degree rather than a diploma, but I couldn't be bothered to go through the paperwork because after 30, 40 years, who cares?
Yeah, that's true. It's like myself. It's like I try to I have several customers in quite a few customers, and if I try to go to a new customer, I don't, they probably have no idea that I went to college, to be honest. But I mean, I guess they assume that. But yeah, they probably don't. I mean, it's at this point in my career, it's kind of a transactional relationship, which is nice in some ways. But now you graduated from college, and I believe you worked at in a packaging manufacturing plant.
I've had a number of jobs. I first worked for Atomic Energy of Canada. It's at the research labs as a research tech, and that was fascinating. Then a couple of small companies, one dealing with laser systems, then a company more as a sales rep, technical support person for a company selling motion controlled equipment. Then as a small company that did environmental monitoring gear, and then custom packaging company. They had some standard feeders, for example, and standard conveyors, and they would mix and match, and they would do various things with them.
Sure.
Feeding everything from sports cards to cash equivalents, like
cash equivalents. What would you?
Traveler's checks, gift cards.
Oh, okay, wow.
Things like that where you have to track every single item.
I'm picturing like the drug dealer or something with the thousands and thousands of dollars and putting it in the machine that goes.
Yeah. No,
But I don't think that's what you did.
no, no. We never handled cash. That market's pretty much sewn up. But if you wanted to dispense things like books or booklets, um, pogs, uh,
Pogs, yeah. Wow.
Yeah.
Wow,
yeah,
that's a
huge.
throwback.
Sports cards. I mean, I worked there for like, I don't know, 30 years. Um,
Yeah.
when you get to be my age, you look back and say, oh, yes, I've worked a lot of places. And was hooking up a PC to their system to do the real fancy tracking and control. So it was
Well,
real-time process control where a late response is a wrong response.
well, that's interesting. You talked about your programming experience. It was what,
Mm,
C, C sharp, et cetera, et cetera.
yeah.
Now, coming from an industrial background myself, we always use ladder logic. And is that something you ever use, or is that foreign to you?
I I used it a little bit. We tried to stay away from PLCs.
Okay.
Um,
Which are
because
programmable logic controllers. Basically, it's
yeah,
like instead of having a line by line programs, you've got basically it's like an electrical diagram. I find it I like
yeah,
it myself, but that's because I guess I'm used to it. I guess it almost looks like an electrical diagram, and in fact, it's
mhm,
I think it harkens back to relay logic that
yeah.
probably was very very hard 50, 60, 70 years ago. But you never really used that. You actually programmed these with C or I
Yeah,
don't really know what.
yeah, because PLCs are far too limited for what we were doing. It's like we would have to um, create what we call a layout that would describe how the packaging was to be done, and you might have a number of these depending on the job you were running. So these would be stored as a file, and
Okay.
so oh, and over the years that got really, I'll just use the word funky. Um, yeah, but there are tests and so on. But you learn to think in terms of system as a whole.
Well, I was just it's interesting because I feel like thinking about kind of what you're writing and stuff. You I think you talked about how the characters and stuff you kind of set them up almost as a machine in your head. They react
Yeah.
certain ways, so it's almost like I feel like I know you said your engineering experience somewhat informs your writing. Is that is
Mhm.
that is that correct?
Yeah.
Now I feel like
Looking
that'd be a
back
good
on it,
segue.
yes.
I feel like that'd be a good segue. But before we get into that, I also want to mention one other thing. Now, our last guest Tim, he was big in BBSs, and so were you, Brian. And
Yes.
What
you
are
actually,
BBSs, Jeremy?
well, as we
What
we
is
defined last episode, it's called a bulletin board system, and it's basically you set up your phone line so that people call in, and they can talk via text or basically
they call in with their computer,
with their computer over a
Jeremy?
landline. And so yeah,
And
there's
a modem
all
that
kind
makes
of
funky sounds.
modem. Yeah, the modem, the modulator, demodulator. Anyway, that being said, you ran a BBS and you actually met your wife via your BBS. Is
I
that
did.
correct?
Yes. Yes.
Wow.
It's called the Full Moon Computer Emporium. A
Okay.
grandiose, silly term,
That
but then I
that's a
was
good
much younger.
name.
Yeah. Why not?
Um, but I was running it under CPM.
What is
Um,
CPM?
it's one of the earliest popular operating systems. It's what
Okay.
DOS is based on.
Oh wow. So this must
Um,
have been about 1980 or so,
yep,
I guess.
yep.
Okay.
Way back when computers were basically carved out of stone. Came home from work one day and the system was down. So I, rebooted phone line because it had a phone line rang, and I picked it up, and it was this female person on the other end, and she was calling to say that the system was down. I said, "Yeah, I'm just rebooting now," and we chatted for a minute, and fine. And then we would occasionally text chat and occasionally chat over the phone. And over a few weeks, you go, "Well, this is an interesting lady." Knew nothing about her. Didn't know what she looked like. Didn't know how old she was. Figured she was of legal age just from the fact, from her voice and the things she was saying. And you get to the point. Now, guys understand this, where you have to ask the girl out, and you just have to hear her say no, and then everything can go back to being cool. So I asked her out, and to meet in non-modem mode. I thought that was a very clever phrase, and she said, "Sure."
That's not a no.
Yeah, so and we were actually typing at each other. So I remember springing to my feet, screaming at the screen, "Wrong answer! Wrong answer!" Because she was supposed to say no, and then we go, no. So we actually met, and
When you met your wife on BBS, which is you could say the precursor to the internet in some ways, that was a very unusual thing. At some point between when I stopped dating because I was married and now it's become like, of course you meet people online, but then back then it was probably quite unusual.
Yes.
I imagine people like, oh, you met your wife on the not even the internet. That wasn't even a term, I guess.
That's right. Yeah, it was interesting to see the reactions of people, especially women. We had only talked, so we only knew each other intellectually, as if you will. It's not visually at all, as until we met for our first date. And a lot of women found that fabulous.
I guess if nothing else, you knew she was at the time you had to be a fairly technically competent person to even get on a BBS. So, at least you had that in common.
It helps that she's very bright and she's very talented and she's very technically oriented. So
she did some technical writing, or maybe still does.
Still does. Yeah. She's a better technical writer than I am, and she's still doing it as a freelance. She's actually doing freelance editing. It's actually turned into a full-time job. It wasn't supposed to, but hey.
Awesome.
Yeah, she has her upstairs office. I have my downstairs dungeon. Life is good.
Getting back to your writing, kind of your characters, basically you set them up, they behave a certain way, and they kind of drive the story, I guess. When you write a book, do you make an overall thought process of what it's going to be, or do you just start writing, or how does that even work?
Jeremy, I want to back you up for a second, because you haven't mentioned clearly so far that you're talking about fiction. You've been talking about technical writing a lot, so I don't want anybody who's listening to be on the wrong track.
Right. Yeah, let's be clear here. Brian writes fiction exclusively now, correct?
Yes.
Now why did you decide on fiction rather than something true? What's your
I had
reasoning there?
done technical writing for various publications in the past, and basically if the market went away. You guys might be barely old enough to remember those days when you had things like computer magazines that were like an inch thick.
Oh yeah.
And filled with ads. And it was just
the Computer Shopper.
Yeah. Well, no, that was.
I looked forward to that every month.
Yeah, that was a tabloid. I'm thinking of things like Byte, Kilobaud. Dr. Dobbs never got too thick, but it got pretty hefty there for a while. All those magazines, and then they just all kind of vanished within the space of a year and a half, because the market for the advertisers dried up, which means that there wasn't as much advertising, which meant the magazines all went away, which means they all shrank and stayed with their in-house staff, who became overworked, and all their freelancers were basically thrown away.
Yeah.
I'm old enough to be sad that none of my articles will ever be in print.
I gotta be honest. I came in at just the end of it, I guess. Right here, I'm pointing at it. Which I don't know if you can see or not, Patton and Brian, but I'm pointing at my first article I ever got published. It was in Wired UK. I thought that was pretty cool that I'm able to do that.
Yeah.
And like you said, it's not something that's going to happen much. Somebody said, "Oh yeah, Jeremy, he writes for Time magazine." I was like, well, I'm thinking like that's not true, but I'm like, I am never going to be published in Time magazine.
Do they not print that one anymore, Jeremy?
I don't think they do. Although maybe they have. Seems like I've seen it at the grocery store, like they have like special editions or something.
Yeah, it isn't like it used to be. The reason I started fiction is I started about 10 years ago. I mean, I've always been a book person. Ever since I was like 5, I was reading, voracious.
Right. How many books do you have, by the way?
I have 10 books.
Oh, how many books do you own?
We did a tally a few years ago using a program called Library Thing, where you scan in all the barcodes. And we had, I think, 5,300. And
goodness.
Then we've got more since then.
You are definitely a book person between you and your wife.
Very, very much so. There was very little overlap between our libraries, even though we both like similar things in many respects. Like we both like science fiction. It turned out it was different types. So she had all sorts of the old mystery books.
Do you start writing before you retire, or did you start writing when you retired?
No, as my first book came was when I was still working. One Christmas, my sister-in-law came up for Christmas Eve, and we were sitting around, and yes, alcohol was involved. And we had both heard about this thing called NaNoWriMo, the National November Writing Month, where
Yeah.
we try and write 50,000 words in a month. We sort of dared each other to do it. And my wife just sat back and laughed at us both. And we both tried it. She got her son in on it. But of the three of us, I'm the only one that actually finished. And that turned into my first book, a conspiracy thriller, Darkness Creeps Forth. If you can see it, it's a cover I did myself. It's actually some frost on the window that looked kind of
Oh,
creepy.
that does look a little creepy.
That is cool.
And
So what's the general plot about that? What's
basically it's being a Canadian, I had it Canadian oriented. A down on his luck, young private eye stumbles upon an international conspiracy targeting Canada. Hey,
well,
I am Canadian. It's going to be the bad people
yeah.
doing bad things to Canada. He has no powerful friends. It's just him and his best friend against an international conspiracy that seems to hold all the cards. An old forgotten storage facility in northern Ontario that has all sorts of old battlefield nukes and bioweapons. And it's been there for decades, and everybody's just kind of forgotten about it. And the bad guys are after it.
So is this character, has he gone into several of your books? Is this kind of like a one-off?
No, he did turn into a sequel, Darkness Comes Reaping. Bad things. He gets captured by the bad guys. He manages to escape. And there's human trafficking, which he stops with the aid of the OPP, the Ontario Police. He's now on the run, kind of.
Wait, the really Ontario Police is really called the OPP?
Yes.
Yeah, you know
Okay.
me.
It's the Ontario Provincial
Yeah.
Police. That's what they
Okay.
call it.
Well,
It's the OPP.
interesting. We usually try to take a coffee break around now and just kind of make sure everything is going well. Whatever. Give a little shout out to our patrons, including Maker Mike Sizer, fellow Canadian. So we'll go ahead and do that, and when we get back, maybe we'll talk about some of your other books. Sure. Maybe talk about if there's money in self-publishing.
No.
If, just some of the details. No. Okay. Well, don't spoil it. But
Spoilers.
I do a little welcome, and I'll read the people off.
Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Create and Vent podcast coffee break. Jeremy is going to do a lovely job at reading off our top 5 patrons from Patreon, I bet you, because that's what he usually does.
That's right. That's what I usually do. And we got some exciting news. We have our first Shack Steel level patron, who's Tim. So thank you so much. Carl, you're actually apparently alphabetically you're actually below him now, which I think we've determined that it's actually the order in which you sign up, I think. So Carl, thanks so much for your support. Michael Sizer, Raptor, Stuart Morrow, Brian Moses, and Positive Waves, which I think is maybe more than 5, but thanks.
I forgot to count
so
them this time. Usually I put my fingers up as we're going, but I didn't do that, so I have no idea how many names you read. So I'm going to say it's 5.
Thank you so much for your support. And Pat, if somebody wanted to support us, where would they go?
Monetarily, I know where they have to go. It would be to patreon.com/createinvent, all one word. Just a single word there.
Nice.
And you don't have to support us monetarily, Jeremy. We won't be offended if you don't. But I would be extremely excited if people would hit likes and subscribes and things and leave comments and stuff, because that helps us out almost as much as money.
One thing I thought we'd kind of go over in the coffee break too is we got some feedback on our last show. So shall we go ahead and talk about that, Pat?
Well, I'd love to hear the feedback. I haven't even heard it yet. Have I, Jeremy?
I was told, number 1, that I needed a haircut.
Did you get a haircut?
I did not get a haircut. So this haircut is several weeks older than it was last time.
Well, then I'm leaving.
Yeah, I was also told that I needed a ring light. Now, I did not get a ring light, but I moved my my light over a little bit, so I've got like a faux ring light, maybe, sort of like a ring light. So, if I look a little different, then that's why, perhaps. The person also said that Tim Timothy, who we had on last week, they seem to think he had a ring light. They thought he was doing a good job with his presentation.
Oh, interesting.
So,
I have a softbox, Jeremy, up here.
Nice. Yeah, and you just turn it off. All that being said, with our with our call out and our feedback, and if you do have feedback, please do send it to us. I'm on Twitter at Jeremy S. Cook, and you can email me hi@jeremyscook.com.
Jeremy, I've been doing a bad job. I was going to set up a link where you could leave a voicemail. Well, I don't know how fast you're going to be publishing this, Jeremy, because sometimes you're fast. But I'm going to do my best to get a link for people to leave a message before you publish this video.
Okay, so look for that in the description. Click on that, leave us a voicemail or whatever, and we'll either play it or
maybe we'll play it if
you.
it's so we can reply to you.
Or if you don't want us to play your voice, just note that. Just say don't play.
You
my
can
voice.
say that out loud, and we'll listen to it and read it in our brains.
Yeah, but all that being said, we'll get you back to your show.
We will. Oh, but if they want to leave in and they could do a shout out to somebody maybe, and if it's not too offensive, I would leave it in there. Like if they wanted to yell "Baba Booey" or something.
Baba Booey. Yeah, exactly. So yeah, anything like that, we'd love to hear it.
We're gonna get you back to your show with Brian Greiner.
I think we can.
I bet we did. Welcome back from the coffee break, everyone. I'm here with Brian Greiner and my lovely co-host Jeremy Cook here. And Jeremy, did you get to have coffee this month?
Yeah, I did. As usual, I've got my cold coffee from Costco. I've got let's see, I can shake it a little bit. It's got the ice in it.
Oh, it's cold.
It's cold. That's how I do it, Pat. I didn't really start drinking coffee until a couple years ago because I decided, well, it's probably better for you than Dr. Pepper. You're cutting out 100 calories a day or so, 150.
100.
Yeah, and all of a sudden,
what do you drink? Just a shot of Dr. Pepper? Like just a little,
like a can. So
it's only 100 calories. Are there like 800
100
calories in a can or something?
Well, I think it's 150. But anyway, all that being said, I worked out. I did some rough math in my head. I'm like, if I'm going to lose some weight, I could switch to coffee and switch one vice to another. And I'll be honest, it's actually worked out. I've lost several pounds since then. So
someone very smart, who I won't name, once told me that it's a terrible idea to drink your calories. You should eat them. They're much more enjoyable when you eat them. And
it depends what you're drinking.
Yeah,
it
probably does.
That's all debatable. I'd say milkshake's pretty good, but that's a lot of
milkshake's
calories.
Almost a meal though. If it's done well, it's pretty thick.
Well, it's actually called a smoothie, to use the trendy term.
It's like you go to Chick-fil-A and you look at the, I don't even think they have the large milkshakes anymore, but it was like, like 1,000 calories. I'm like, wow, that's a lot of.
Somebody made me go to lunch a few months ago. We went to a place called the Shake Shack. I guess it's a chain. And the shake, you couldn't get it through the straw. I mean, it was a fat straw. You had to wait like an hour before it was thin enough to drink. It was amazing. It was way too sweet.
You'd think if you named your place the Shake Shack, you'd have some shakes that were very easy to drink.
Yeah, so. It was more like a Frosty. You ever have a Frosty?
Oh yeah.
They come with a spoon.
They do. Yeah, that's not really. I don't think they claim to be milkshakes though.
They don't. But the Shake Shack milkshake reminded me. I mean, I've only had one shake at the Shake Shack, so like maybe I had an anomaly. But
maybe they had a bad day. Yeah.
Yeah, you never know.
So Brian,
shaking aside.
That being said, I just got to the part in your second Bob book because you wrote a book called some books, and they were talking about going to a pub to have some pub grub. Yep. And I was really thinking like I haven't been to a place with a nice greasy burger in a while, and I was thinking I really wanted one, but it was like it's like 10 at night, and I'm not gonna do that. I got kids that are gonna be like, where's Dad?
So what you're saying is that I'm a bad influence.
You're bad in that time, I suppose.
Well, at least you'd be eating your calories, Jeremy, instead of drinking them.
But all that being said, so you wrote the one book, the darkness books.
Yeah,
I guess you could say, and then you wrote the saga of Bob.
Well, actually, no. I wrote the Werewolves of Winter. That's a horror. It started out, I'd been reading a lot of H.P. Lovecraft, and I wanted to write a doom and gloom, cosmic horror, and one man's fight, and of course he must lose because always, because the cosmic horrors always win. And I'm writing this, and I'm going, well, there's a way he could fight back. So it changed from a doom and gloom, everybody dies novel to, well, you can fight back. I think that's where my engineering background kicked in. You're raised to solve problems. Well, here's a guy trapped on a farm, surrounded by werewolves. He's a data nerd, so he looks at the data and realizes that there's something really bad going on, centered around Toronto. It seems to be the epicenter for this worldwide epidemic of werewolves. And the thing with the werewolves, I tried to make it different by saying, okay, fine. They always die off in the winter, but in the spring a new crop comes up. It hence the title, The Werewolves of Winter, because one winter the werewolves don't go away, and they're where this guy is. So he's got to fight these winter werewolves. He comes up with ways to fight them.
You've written 10 books, correct?
Yep. And then after the werewolves, I did 5 of the Bob Saga books.
Well, I just think about like myself. I write technical articles, and as you were saying, well, you say the market's gone. I would argue the market's changed. I suppose I write for very online stuff. Fortunately for me, it has not disappeared completely. It's just maybe a different form. But what I do, stuff I write, it'll be 1,000 words. Yeah, I think the last one I turned in was maybe 4,000 words, and I think that was the longest article I've ever done. But now a book, that's much
4,000 words is a long article, Jeremy.
It was like a guide. I wouldn't even call it an article. It was a instructional mini book or something. But I think about it. It's like that takes a bit of discipline for me to do it. And in fact, it's a little bit hard because sometimes I think, it's nice to say, okay, these short articles, I do it, I get paid, I know, ching, 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 ching. That's not exactly how it goes. But, the longer articles, you just kind of wonder, what am I doing here? Am I like just wasting my time? I gotta make some money, whatever. But like with a book, I mean, how many words are we talking about? And how do you handle just the length of it and just the fact that you're just day after day, I guess.
Yeah. I got into it not knowing how much work it was going to be. It's like a lot of techies. Once you start on something, you must finish it. Your mind gets locked in. I finished the first one.
You should see how many unfinished projects I have. It's amazing.
Yeah, there's unfinished, but you go to a point where it isn't like you give up after the first hour, unless it blows up and then you say that never happened. I have some projects sitting where the corpses are a little scorched, and I'm never going to touch them again. Like when the perf board turns into smoke in front of you.
I know this feeling. I know this smell.
It's a sign.
You can't put the magic smoke back in.
Yeah, it's not a case of back in. It's when the perf board, there's no more perf board.
I smoked transformer one time, and I was working on a machine in a machine shop, and I don't think the machinists were too happy with me, the way it smelled afterwards in there.
For some reason, I started to build a high voltage, a few thousand volts. I think it was to power a helium neon tube. And something went wrong. I turned away and I looked back and I saw the stuff coming down. I'm going, what's this? Raining inside the apartment? No, the perf board had gone foof, and it had evaporated, and all the little bits were the carbonized bits of the
fiberglass and stuff.
Were you coughing a little bit after that?
No, I just unplugged it because the fuse had blown after the perf board blew.
Okay.
I said, let's not do this anymore.
So I guess that being said, your argument would be engineers tend to be able to stick to something and just go for it day after day.
Not just engineers, but you have to have the frame of mind where you're kind of too stupid to quit. In a sense,
Right.
You got to be stubborn. There's days you're going to feel like you want to rip your head open and mash your brain, and you curl into a fetal ball and you start screaming at the screen. But then you say, well, and then you get back to it and you type away, or you do handwriting, or whatever it takes. You get the story down. And
so how long does it take to write a book? Like how many hours or days or?
Well, Stephen King says it takes like 2 weeks.
Yeah.
But George R.R. Martin says it takes
a decade,
5 years.
Yeah. if you have a firm concept or a template or even a sketch of what's supposed to happen, you go, this happens, this happens, this happens, this happens. And in engineering terms, it's straightforward, but you got to write a story around it, and you have to make it interesting. It isn't that there's a guy finds a spaceship, toodles around the galaxy, and isn't it great? And this is how the spaceship works. That was like 1940s, 1930s. You have to get a little more background about the character, why he might be doing it, the implications of what he does. Like in my Saga of Bob books, they're fairly light reading. I think you'll agree, Jeremy. I mean, if they're they're meant to be a lighter reading in a way that you don't see much anymore. I like the lighter stuff. I always did.
Yeah, I agree with it. He seems like a nice, happy guy, whatever, just to go.
I mean, he has trauma. I mean, it's what's a hero. It's without trauma, but he overcomes. As my wife would say when I was writing the books, it says, Bob suffered enough today. And you'll notice that he does suffer quite a bit, but he triumphs. He overcomes.
When you're writing a book, though, do you get up and just say, I'm just going to do this for 4 hours? Do you have a goal? Do you have what's your general process?
No, because I'm doing it for fun. I don't stick to a schedule. It's a bit more organic. If I'm doing NaNoWriMo, I say I must do so many hours a day, but I'll break that up. Like, there's no point in staring at the screen for 4 hours. Go away, do something else, get your mind clear. If your writing is that blocked, that means something's not right with the story, and you got to figure out what's wrong with the story. It isn't like a circuit board where you can test the ICs or let's look at the program for, as of your logic. You let your mind think about the logic of what's happening, and you go, oh, I'm trying to force it this way, but everything so far says I have to go that way. That's what writers mean when they say that the characters take over. They develop like a little logical process is inside your head, sort of like a state machine, if you want to speak of it as in software terms. But they become like little subprograms, and they have their own characteristics. And if you're trying to force 12 volts into a 5-volt logic chip, bad things happen. That's all part of the process. So it's hard. It's not like an assembly line. It is for some people because they're churning out a book based on a formula.
I feel like if I was doing this professionally, like writing fiction professionally, what would be really very tough is I feel like, you sit down, you do your work, whatever. That's what I do now. But It's like you're saying sometimes you get blocked. So it's part of the process is going back and say, okay, how can I adjust this outline? How can I just take a break? How can I take a walk? Whatever. It just seems like there would be days or hours or whatever where you feel like you're just very much not productive, but that's part of it. Is that
Well, know what's great,
accurate?
Jeremy? Like what we write, I assume we write similar enough things. If I have a topic where I write half of an article and I say I don't know where to go with this, I just put it aside, and I'm not getting paid to write a specific one. So I could just say, throw that one away. I'll just start from scratch on some other slightly different topic.
Yep.
Right.
But if you're writing a book and you're 20,000 words in, you've got to get to 25,000 and 30,000. You can't just pick that whole thing up, put it aside, and then start book 2, right?
That's not entirely true.
How long is a book in terms of words?
This is a whole topic. You could spend an hour on this. But typically, the minimum size for a book is 50, 60,000 words.
Okay.
So
if I wrote a 4,000-word article, I'm already a tenth of the way there.
Well, not quite a
12th,
tenth.
but 13th.
But it depends
13th.
on the genre. It's like a mystery is typically 60 to 70,000. Fantasy science fiction, 100,000 plus. It varies. But you look in the past, some of the top ranked novels we would call novellas these days. They're 40,000 words.
What would it be an example?
That's a long novella.
Yeah, 1984 is short. The trend nowadays is more to the longer stuff, except for certain genres like romance, which is huge, is in sales. Cozy mysteries, large sales for a certain demographic, and they tend to be short, 60,000, 70,000 words. Mine tended to be all over the map. My first book, 65,000 words, because that's all I could do.
Right.
But that's all the story demanded. The sequel, closer to 90,000 words.
Can I take us on a very small tangent? Because you guys reminded me of something that I just read yesterday. Because I'm sure you guys learned that on the internet that Paul Rubens just died.
Yes.
And I'm sad about that. But I did not know. I was a fan of Pee-wee's Big Adventure, the movie, when I was a kid. And I only just learned yesterday that Phil Hartman was one of the 3 writers and creators of the Pee-wee's Big Adventure movie. But then I learned, this I thought was fantastic. The 3 guys that wrote it, Pee-wee, Paul Rubens, Phil Hartman, and I can't remember the third gentleman's name. I'm sorry to him. But they never wrote a screenplay. They read a book on writing screenplays, and they followed it to the letter. They made it 90 minutes long, 3 acts. Each act was exactly 30 minutes, and each act was exactly 30 pages. And it just boom, boom, boom to the book.
Yep.
It was.
Really?
They had no idea what they were doing.
Screenwriting is a special niche thing. I took it's an intro course on it. Every page is 1 minute. It's when you submit a screenplay, they insist upon a specific format. Margins are this big. The typeface is such and such. Exactly. You must not vary. And the reason for that is everybody knows 1 page is 1 minute, plus or minus a few seconds.
For sure. Now you've written several books. Can we get down to the brass tacks of what you think, what you get for it monetarily?
Sure.
How
Nothing.
Sales been? How it's been? Nothing. But I mean, it's not literally nothing.
No, it's not.
I mean, you've sold at least 2 books because I bought them.
Yep. Thank you. Thank you. Blessings upon you. Readers are what writers live for. The hardest part is gaining traction in the eyes of the public.
Sure.
For someone like myself with no social media base to speak of, it's hard to get known and get traction. People with a larger social media or a specialized social media, for example, yourselves, you'd probably get people buying a fiction book just to see, oh, wow, he did a fiction book? Well, okay, I'll, cut him a break. But they might do that once.
Right. Right.
For an unknown, it's hard to get that break. But having said that, if you catch the public's mind at just the right time, anything. Like Jeremy, you mentioned the book Wool. Started as a series of blog posts. But there are other books about the same time.
And I'll say Wool was self-published to begin with, and being so successful now, it's on Apple TV. It's probably, I don't know if it's the biggest self-publishing success story or close to it, but it's
for everyone else out there. The book Wool that they're talking about, the show on Apple TV is called Silo, and I enjoyed it very much. I finished it up about maybe a week ago.
I have not read the book yet. I am, as I signed up for it at my library, and I'm on the waiting list for it. The one that I have read is The Martian by Andy Weir. That became a movie.
But that was self-published?
That started out as a series of blog posts.
Really?
Chapter by chapter, scene by scene, and people liked it, so he kept going. Then it got seen by enough people, and it captured people's imagination, because it was like, to me, the classic older science fiction. There was a problem, and a smart guy worked hard to solve it, and it helped that he was a techie.
That's The Martian.
Yeah, problem, solution. There's fallout from it, and he's not perfect. It's almost like a science lesson, because he got as much real science in there as he could.
So that's interesting. You talk about breaking out. So you think a good formula for doing that would be publishing your story not as a story, but as a series of blog posts.
That works for some people. It doesn't work for everyone. A Canadian author, Terry Fallis, wrote a thing called The Best Laid Plans. It's a satire of politics, and it's hilarious. And it started out as a series of blog posts where he read the chapters. And after a year or so, that gained enough of a following that it got a publisher interested.
I can tell you what's awesome about this that probably most people aren't realizing. Getting publicity out today is better than starting to get publicity out in 2 years when you finish the book.
Yes.
Every minute you can spend building momentum, you'll be 2 years ahead by the time you publish, if you have any sort of...
Absolutely correct. A number of people have said the reason you start building up your social media presence and you get to be everybody's friend, and then when you come out with a book, they'll say, oh, so-and-so is my friend, so I'll buy their book. And that strikes me as sleazy.
The part I find interesting about social media is not that you would buy my book or whatever I'm selling. Not that you would. But the trick is finding the right connection on social media who's interested in your work and then spreads it to their gigantic audience. You know, the networking effect of social media networks.
That's what you're supposed to aim for.
You can have 10,000 followers, but it's one of them that matter. There's one in that 10,000 that actually matters. You could have 2 followers if you had the right other follower.
Yeah. Whereas I've always been on social media just to meet people and exchange cat pictures. Oh, and pictures of my baking. It says, because I've noticed that Jeremy always likes pictures of my baking.
I do. I try to like people's posts. People that post something interesting. It's easy enough to press that heart button or whatever.
More than once, my friend Brian Moses has said nice things about your flower and insect pictures.
Yes.
On social media. And I love the baking stuff because I wish I could still bake. I'm not allowed to eat carbs.
Oh, dear.
So I shouldn't be baking. I can eat some carbs. I mean, I don't have to completely abstain. But if I bake, I'm going to eat.
Yeah.
And I'm not allowed. I used to love baking bread.
Yeah.
And
biscuits
and rolls.
I hadn't realized that you were on a diet, Jeremy. So I'll have to post more of my baking pictures.
I wouldn't say I'm on a diet. I'm trying to watch what I eat a little bit. And it's interesting. I have lost a significant amount of weight, but it's been over like 10 years. But I eat plenty. I mean, I don't know. I'll just say this. My wife, I don't know, maybe we'll cut this, maybe not, but my wife said she was concerned that I was getting too skinny. Pat, do you have any idea how much I weigh?
No, I don't. I don't even understand how tall you are. I've never seen you in person.
So I'm 6'3" and a little bit, and I weigh about 235 pounds. But I guess I'm just built in such a way that's not a lot of weight for me. I mean, it's not a tiny amount of weight, but I'm not fat at that weight. I was probably fat at more like, about 50 pounds ago, but like I said, we can cut that if we need to. But
no. You always leave in the embarrassing stuff.
Jeremy. Somebody's going to do that math on 235 plus 50.
I used to be skinny, but then I got old.
The embarrassing thing is, I mentioned I'm married, right? So is there anything you see that might be missing here?
Like what?
I'm not wearing a wedding ring.
Me neither.
Yeah,
Jeremy, I'm married.
Yeah, you are too. Okay, I'll notice. So I lose like 50 pounds. And the reason I don't have a wedding ring, I lost like 50 pounds. And I think it just kind of slipped off my finger when I was taking a walk one day. And oh man, it made me so sad and whatever. But a little work with a metal detector later and I still don't have it. So,
no. I just don't like jewelry, Jeremy. I wouldn't want things on my hands. It'd be weird.
Yeah. Well, the other thing is if you're working around machinery.
Well, that's the thing. I was always very careful to take it off when I worked, and I never lost it that way. We actually went to the jeweler a couple days ago, about a week ago, and they sized my finger for another ring, and they said I'd lost like a size and a quarter since I got the ring. So
wow,
it seemed I don't have much of a concept of that, but it's.
Well, what sort of ring are you getting, Jeremy? I hear these titanium rings are popular, but now I'm terrified of them since I've learned.
It is titanium. That's the one I had.
Take it if it's titanium. Don't wear it when you ride your bike.
Why is that?
Because if you jam your finger the right way and your finger starts to swell up, the paramedics can't cut a titanium ring off. They have to take you to the hospital and use a saw, like a power tool, to cut through the titanium ring. And if it takes too long, you can lose that finger.
Well, I should have talked to you a couple days ago.
I don't know how common this is to have happen, but as soon as I heard that, I thought, yeah, maybe that's an easy thing to avoid. I figured I'm gonna stay away from that.
Basically, I ordered what's the closest thing I could get to the exact same one I got when I was married, so I figured that's the right thing to do. There was a show I watched. 2 of the people get their fingers shot off and they end up like sewing the wrong finger on each other. And, they're like, well, it takes like a day for the finger to die. And anyway, the show's called Patriot, which I thought was pretty funny actually. Kind of dark humor. Anyway, we're way off the topic today as we usually are.
But to answer your question as to about income, I earn the same income from a paperback in terms of the royalty as I do from an ebook.
I mean, I suppose there is a certain expense that nobody has to pay for ebooks, so perhaps that makes sense.
You can do whole shows on the cost, but basically on Amazon, if your book is between a certain price range, you get a 70% royalty. So if you make it too cheap, they reduce your royalty to 30%.
That's not as good.
It used to be if it was less than $1.99, they would reduce your royalty to 30%. Between $1.99 and $9.99, I think it is, you get 70%.
That's not as bad as I would have expected. I'm sure I don't want to open up this can of worms because I feel like this would be another hour we could talk about the pricing and stuff. But yeah, I imagine you're rolling the dice to see if you get listed in like an Amazon top. I don't even know what Amazon calls their like top 10 genre books of the day, and you get a bunch of sales or something. I wonder. I mean, I don't want to wonder because I know that's a rabbit hole. I'm sure.
Oh, it is a rabbit hole with poisonous worms that will bite you. It's the first of each series is $3 for the ebook. This is in U.S. funds. The rest of the series are $4. Well,
that's how he gets us.
And $3.99.
We got to pay an extra $1 to read the second book.
That's right.
That's right.
And of that, I get 70%. So I get between $2.50 and $3. Now, if you look at ebooks, a lot of people are pricing them much higher. Like I priced mine at the time half of what a better selling book was in that genre. People are asking for $20 for an ebook.
Yeah,
for a first-time author. Insane.
If you charge little enough, I'll buy somebody's book just to say, I bought their book. I don't even have to. It's like a pack of gum.
Yeah.
You don't buy is it a pack of gum?
It's been a while.
I don't know.
It's gum.
Yeah, like a little impulse purchase. I'll buy anybody's anything for a few bucks. But if you're going to charge me $20, I'm going to say, well,
yeah, I'm going to think about
if
that.
I'm not going to read that, I'm not going to buy it.
Or even $10. That's it's a popular price point and has been for some years. And I'm going, for somebody I don't know in a genre I don't normally read, it sounds interesting, but I'm not spending $10.
Yeah, yeah, I better know I'm going to read it at $10.
Yeah.
If I pay less, I might not care if I don't read it. I might not be mad. Maybe.
So Brian, if somebody is thinking about writing fiction and not.
Yep.
I mean, what would you say somebody should do? What's
Jeremy? Are you thinking about writing fiction?
I don't know.
Everybody should give it a shot.
So.
I'm honestly of the firm belief that everybody should give it a shot. Start with a short story. Aim for 2,000 to 3,000 words. Anything less than that.
Is a short story easier? Because I have this feeling keeping something short is not always easy.
No, I tried to write a 1,000-word short story. I submit to someone. They were looking for 1,000 words, and 1,000 words is tough.
Yeah, I know Jeremy was complaining about it. He was saying writing a 4,000-word article was too much for. He didn't like that length. It was too much work. But I would argue that cutting that 4,000 down to 3,000 or 2,000 is way more work than just letting the words come out. Just let them keep going.
Yeah, well, think of a short story as a snapshot, a novella like a TikTok video, and a novel is like a movie. Because in a movie, you've got scope to explore the issues, whatever those issues are, and however simplistic your book is, it should have an exploration of issues of some sort. A short story is very focused. You're looking at it through a drinking straw. A novel, you should have a larger idea, beginning and an arc that ends. Maybe have one or two scenes that are vivid in your imagination, and then build from there. Write that one scene or sketch it out in detail and see how it hangs together.
But you might have a skeleton of something and then maybe some important parts, and then you kind of fill in the rest.
And then inflate the rest of it with your air compressor there.
And be open to change as things develop. But don't throw anything away. Take it out and put it in a file, and you'll use it somewhere down the road. It's like for the Bob stuff, I've got short stories written that I can't put in the book. They don't belong in the story.
I think if you're going to start writing, start publishing it on the internet right now. Start writing, start publishing. And even if you have to change, who cares if you have to change it later? Even if you get 4 chapters up on 4 blog posts, and you get to the end of the book and you decide you have to rewrite it. Who cares? That's fine.
Tell a story from the viewpoint of the Strand Beast as it strides across the post-apocalyptic hellscape.
That sounds interesting, actually.
How much science have I learned from watching science fiction growing up? Well, there's enough real science in science fiction that things just get into your head, right?
Sometimes there's a lot of bad.
There's a lot of fake stuff. It's true, but
I just feel like it's like you don't necessarily know the real from the fake, and things get like in The Expanse. You've got something called an Epstein drive, and it's like, oh, is that the real thing? But that's not a real thing. They just made that.
Well,
up.
that's the only part besides the rings and stuff, but for the most of The Expanse, the Epstein drive is the only thing truly fictional. The rest is orbital mechanics. It's very well done.
But it doesn't have to be. They could just make something up. You wouldn't know, and they can certainly do it if they wanted to.
Then you're getting into the debate. It's of hard versus soft science fiction, which has been going on since I was a kid.
Yeah,
and going on forever.
I guess true. I learned. You make a lightsaber. You have to get the Jedi crystals or whatever, and you put them in the
Kyber crystal.
Kyber crystal.
I only know that because I saw something about that yesterday. Literally yesterday.
But that's probably a good place to end it, though. Unless Brian, you had anything else you need to get off your chest before we get going?
No, I would urge technical people to explore their non-technical side. Whether it's writing or painting or making stuff with your hands, something different is to exercise different parts of your brain to be a more complete you, rather than just a corporate drone. Because it's far too easy for technical people to fall into the trap, being overly focused on their career and being useful to their employer.
Go take pictures of bugs on flowers.
Grow something and learn something about the outside world. Talk to different people. If you go to a store, talk to the staff like they're people. Learn all sorts of interesting things about the world that you never knew.
Where can we find you, and where can we buy your books?
Well, on social media, I'm on Blue Sky and I'm on Twitter. A couple of other smaller ones that I don't go to much anymore.
What's your handle there on Blue Sky and Twitter?
Mr. Fumblethumbs.
Mr. Fumblethumbs. On both?
Yes, on both. My writing blog is briangreiner.com, BrianGreiner.com or .ca. It will link to the actual site.
I'm going to tell you, I have trouble with the E and the I. There's something to do with the way my fingers type. No matter what I'm thinking, it comes out a different way than I'm thinking. And then I look at it and it doesn't look right. And I don't know if I typed it wrong or if I'm reading it. And then I have so much trouble. I'm bad at it.
I have seen that issue
for C, right?
Yeah, I've seen that my entire life. People will spell it with the inverse. And as far as my making stuff blog, it's greiner.ca/blog.
You managed to get yourself a good domain name for yourself.
Yes, but only .ca.
Why did you get a California address? No?
.ca is Canada. You Florida people, you got to get out more.
I was making a little joke, but I think I've gotten confused with that before, to be honest. Maybe not with you. That being said, the .tv domain name, you know what that's from, Pat? I feel like we've had this conversation before.
We have had this conversation. I can tell you exactly what it's from. I can even tell you about the island that's sinking and everything. You want me to tell you the whole story again?
Well,
yeah.
It's,
Tuvalu,
yeah. And it's we mentioned that in some other episode. I don't know. We don't have to go over the whole thing.
I hear they might be evacuating. I think I was reading recently in the news, or they might be being asked to evacuate or something. I'm not sure. I'm unprepared for this question.
They're a sovereign nation, right? So who's asking them?
Well, they're I don't know, but they're very small and they're getting more and more underwater every year.
Yeah, the outlying areas are being evacuated to the more central parts of the island.
Okay. Oh, look at that. Brian knows about Tuvalu as well. So.
Well, there was a two-page spread in the paper last weekend.
Yeah. And neither of us studied for this question, Jeremy. We had no idea this was coming up.
No, we actually didn't. Pat's not being sarcastic there.
Yeah, it's not even on your notes here, Jeremy. Well, you have an important... We didn't answer an important question, though, Jeremy.
What's up?
Where do we buy Brian's books?
Oh.
Amazon, Kobo, Apple, Barnes & Noble, all
pretty much
usual.
Everywhere books are sold.
Yep.
So you could search for like the Saga Bob or something.
Yeah,
okay.
Or just under my name. It comes as ebooks and paperbacks. The paperbacks are printed through Amazon's service, KDP. So that's probably the only place you'll be able to find the paperbacks. The ebooks are more economical. I have no problems if people buy the ebooks instead of the paperback.
Well, I need to buy a paperback because I have a bookshelf where I try to put at least one book from everybody that we've had on the podcast who has books.
Well,
It seems like it's a nice shelf to be building up.
If you're going to get the Saga of Bob, there's 5 so far, so you got to buy 5.
I'm ready.
And then off air, when I'm gone, Jeremy can tell you if it's actually any good.
Pat, where can we find you?
Everybody watching and listening, you should come and visit Jeremy and I on our Discord server. I've been doing a bad job of plugging that. It's at butterwhat.com/Discord, and you can come and do a little text chat with us. Yeah. We probably won't marry you, but
my wife wouldn't be
most
happy about
likely,
that.
It's very unlikely that we will. But we are sociable, so you can come and talk to us.
What is this Discord server that?
Discord is like IRC. If you remember IRC from the internet, it's chat rooms and stuff. It's like that, but it's more accessible to the average person because it's in a web browser. They have a client, but it's a web-based IRC server, sort of.
Kind of like Twitter plus IRC server plus, I don't know. It's pretty neat. You can find me if you look up Jeremy S. Cook. I'm on Twitter at Jeremy S. Cook, or now Blue Sky at just at Jeremy Cook. So that's pretty neat.
Jeremy's trying to rope me into this Blue Sky thing, but
I don't know.
I'm very anti-social media lately.
I just miss Pat. I miss Pat on Twitter, so I thought maybe
Boy, I don't want to go down this rabbit hole either, Jeremy, but I'm going to say I'm very happy not posting on social media anymore.
According to an article I read in the Wall Street Journal, Discord is social media. So just, I think they don't know what they're talking about. But,
I think the trouble is that the term has become so overly broad that almost everything on the internet qualifies. If you have a user account and you talk to people you interact with any other user accounts, it's social media.
Yeah, seems like terms just become more watered down. Just generally speaking, terms become more watered
undescriptive. Down. It may as well just be a website now.
It's just a website.
Like an old BBS.
Yeah, hope you enjoyed it. And Brian, thanks so much for coming on. Pat,
thank you for having me.
This has been fun. Thank you, guys.
All right. See you later.
Now I have to find all the stop buttons. Jeremy is my job.
We'll get you back to your show with Brian Greiner.
No. You're going to have to edit that out.
It's Greiner.
We're going to get you back to your show with Brian Greiner. Did we get it?
Randomness is a funky concept.